ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to a session on Sikh art history. This is pegged to August Schoefft paintings that were restored during the past few years. These are all there in the Lahore fort as part of the Princess Bhamba collection. Fakir Aijazuddin Sahib is here, one of the most eminent art historians, who's played a critical role in the conservation and restoration of the August Schoefft paintings at the Lahore fort. So this is really a matter of pride for us that our Sikh heritage is being preserved, protected, projected. And alongside we've got none other than Susan Stronge, one of the leading specialists on Mughal art and Sikh art. Susan is at the moment also she's curated this show which is underway at the Victorian Albert Museum on the Mughals. And will continue until the first week of May, if I'm not mistaken. We've got Nadhra Shahbaz as the chair of the session. Nadhra is a historian of art history, Sikh art history, and a professor at LUMS. So I hope you enjoy this, and over to Nadhra.
Thank you very much, Razi. Thank you for organizing this fabulous panel that Razi has organized, allowing us to talk about the Lahore Darbar's splendor. So today we will be talking about object stories, objects that were once a part of the Lahore Darbar's Tosha Khana or treasury, and objects that once added to the glory of our city, Lahore. And then these objects were made to leave Lahore. And I will use a Persian expression here, Anha az Punjab raft. And I will come back to it in a while. Before I invite my esteemed panelists, and we will soon be joined by Mr. Kamran Lashari as well. He's on his way from Islamabad. I will encourage all of you to transport, let's all of us transport ourselves to the world of museums and libraries and see what they have to offer us. They have books and artifacts. When we look at books, we imagine them to carry a wealth of information which is dynamic. But sometimes when we look at artifacts, we see them as static and silent, quietly sitting in a museum shelf next to the label, not echoing anything but the voice of the curator. But after today's session, and during today's session, I'm sure that will change, and we will realize how each artifact carries encyclopedic information, not about itself, but about the hands that crafted it, the patron who commissioned it, and the sensibilities of people who handled them in subsequent times. So we are here to learn about the splendor of the Lahore Darbar and the Tosha Khana, the treasury of our city of Lahore. So most of these objects were either collected or captured, but many, and I say many, were crafted for the Maharaja and people around him. And all of these were dispersed after Punjab's annexation in 1849. But what we find about these objects in contemporary records, including Umdat Tawarikh, which is the Sikh Darbar's court chronicles, and accounts of European travelers, is what they looked like and how glorious they were. The Lahore Darbar records have not been studied so far about the itinerary of these objects. But we find information about them in, most other accounts. One of these are John Loggin's papers. John Loggin served as the governor of the Lahore fort shortly after Punjab's annexation by East India Company between April 1849 until December 1849. So he was tasked with this responsibility of drawing up lists so they could decide what was to be done with them. And what was done with them was, briefly, and I'm sure Aijazuddin and Susan Stronge will shed more light on it, was one section was selected for the Queen, another one for the Court of Directors of the East India Company, another section for the Governor General, Lord Dalhousie, small section to the newly deposed Maharaja Dalip Singh, a young boy, and the rest was auctioned. Some of these objects are now housed in two collections, not all of them, some. One in the Lahore Fort, the Sikh Gallery in the Lahore Fort, and the other in Victoria and Albert Museum. And the two esteemed panelists will, of course, walk us through both of these. They have been studying these collections for decades, and their scholarship has informed mine. And I'm sure during today's session, it is going to inspire you to seriously take up the study of these artifacts in the future. So while the Toshakhana dispersal planning started shortly after annexation in March 1849, the actual action did not start before Dalip Singh left Lahore on 21st December 1849 with John Logan. There was a poignant poem published on January 21st, 1850 in a local newspaper in Persian. And I will take the liberty of reciting or recounting it for you with English translation. Why? Because each of the artifacts that we will be seeing today, being discussed here today, actually silently carries the same sentiment, that it left Lahore at some point. So the poem goes, and this was written by Ghulam Sarwar Qureshi Lahori, the author of Makhzan-e-Punjab. So this is what he said. Chun Shah-e Punjab, az Punjab raft, when the king of Punjab left the Punjab. Chashme-san az chashme-mardum aab raft. Tears flowed down people's eyes like streams of water. Alami dar chashme-mardum shud siyah. The world in their eyes was covered with darkness. Chun dar chashme-an ghairate mehtab raft. This was when their eyes lost the sight of moonlight. Jumla gul dar hijre-u khurdand gil. All flowers lamenting this separation rolled in dust. Balk az nargis khomar-e khwab raft. The narcissus lost the dreamy languor of its eyes. Guft sarwar, as sarwar, va in sukhun. Sarwar, suffering pain, uttered a cry and said, Now kali az gulshan-e Punjab raft. A freshly blossomed flower from the orchard of Punjab has left. So let's turn to Fakir Sayyid Aijazuddin, first to learn about the Sikh Gallery, Lahore Fort's treasures, and he needs no introduction, but for the sake of reminding ourselves of his achievements, I will say a few words. He has studied and practiced accounting and finance, has served in senior management positions in Pakistan and the UAE, taught business management and finance at LUMS, and throughout his journey, his connection with documenting and publishing on the art historical aspects of the Punjab has stayed strong. And his latest book, Studies in Majesty, Paintings by August Schoefft, is his 22nd publication, mashallah. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. A very generous introduction. It's the kind of thing that you only hear about after you're dead. So it's nice to have a premature obituary, as it were. I'm deeply grateful to all of you for being here, and particularly to Dr. Tarunjit Singh Batalia, who has come all the way from the States. He is He loves Lahore much more than Lahore is aware of, because he has done the documentation of the Lahore fort, and he has traced every single monument there is and brought out the relationship between that, relationship with that and the various periods of Sikh history. So our compliments, and I'm delighted that you're here with us. So we're deeply grateful to you, sir, for being here. It's an irony and it's a tragedy that in a gathering like this in Lahore, we should only have one Sikh. But,
There's another one.
aha, well, you're not wearing your turban, huh? So forgive me, but welcome. And I think it's important for us to recognize that the period of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's presence here was of singular significance, because it's the only time in our 5,000-year-old history, neither before nor afterwards, that the Punjab was a nation state. Never before and never afterwards. So it is a singular achievement, and it's something that we owe to the Sikh Raj, and particularly to Maharaja Ranjit Singh's persona. I'll be dealing with the Princess Bhamba collection. The question is, who was Princess Bhamba? Well, as Nadhra has pointed out, many of these pictures which I'll be sharing with you were not necessarily completed here, although Schoefft, the gentleman who's the painter in this series, came to Lahore, did a series of sketches, and then took them back with him and completed these paintings abroad, some in Vienna, some in London, and they were exhibited abroad. They were bought by Maharaja Dalip Singh, this young boy who was taken and gentrified, made into an Englishman, but to his misfortune, when he brought his mother, Rani Jinda, the redoubtable mother, Rani Jinda, brought her to England to live with him, she, within 2 years, managed to undo what the British had tried for the previous 13 years. And they wanted to make him an English gentleman, and he just reconverted, and she made him a Sikh all over again. He then tried to come back to India, failed, and died. He had 3 children, 3 sons, one of whom died prematurely, 2 elder sons who married into the aristocracy, and then 3 daughters. What is interesting is Queen Victoria put a condition on them that none of them was to have a child, because she did not want a claimant to the throne of the Punjab. And when you consider that Punjab, in its original state, as was left during the annexation, was bigger than the United Kingdom. So she had reasons for her misgivings. Bhamba inherited this collection, which was built up by Dalip Singh. She inherited this collection from her elder brothers as and when they died. She then moved to Lahore and kept this collection with her in Model Town. Died in 1957, and sensibly, because Pakistan governments could occasionally act sensibly, they bought this entire collection, and it was kept in what's now the Sikh Gallery. So what I will be sharing with you are the paintings by August Schoefft, and there are 18 paintings in the collection, 11 of which are by August Schoefft, which is why we've devoted this session to August Schoefft. So let me begin. Who was August Schoefft? Well, he was an Hungarian who was born in Budapest in 1809, and I'd just like here to pay homage and gratitude to the Hungarian embassy, which is represented by 2 of its officers here. The Hungarian embassy, 3 years ago, they brought a team of 5 restorers, and they brought them to Lahore, and in the Sikh Gallery for about 5 months, they renovated each of these paintings. So what you're seeing now are the paintings as they would have been at the time of Schoefft. If you had seen them a year ago, they would have been fairly grotty. Today, they sparkle with the light and color that Schoefft had intended. Schoefft, as I've said, came to the Punjab, and he arrived in Bombay first in 1838, and in search of wealthy patrons, he then travels to Travancore, and from there, he moves to Calcutta. Aapko karoon, isko karoon? Sorry. I'm defeated by technology. Calcutta. And you can see this is one of the scenes that he did of the tank as it was in Calcutta. From there, he travels up the river, Ganges. Aapki taraf ya us taraf? On kar dijiyega, please. He goes to Benares, and he does this kind of picturesque scene of Benares, which shows the ghats, the famous ghats, etc., elephants, and sadhus. He continues to Delhi. At Delhi, he is taken up by the Mughal court, and at that time, remember, we're talking about 1841, 40-41, Bahadur Shah Zafar was still the emperor of Delhi, and he was ensconced in the Red Fort. Bahadur Shah Zafar was a very interesting but rather emasculated emperor, because he, wonderful poet, but he was he was a titular ruler, as it were. So it was obligatory for anybody who visited Delhi to call on him and pay respects, except that they had to pay more than that. Schoefft had to pay 300 French livres for the privilege of painting him. Now, the jewels that you see were not, in fact, in the possession of Bahadur Shah Zafar. The jewels, he had lost most of them. So when Schoefft was doing the painting, he just added and gave him all the appurtenances of royalty. Now you'll see that Schoefft was, in fact, inspired by a painting that was done 50 years earlier by Tilly Kettle, who had visited the court of Arcot, and she had painted the Nawab at the time, Muhammad Khan, and you can see the similarity in the jewels. So Schoefft borrowed that and endowed Bahadur Shah Zafar with them. While Schoefft was there, he did two other portraits. One of Mirza Mughal, who was the fifth son of Bahadur Shah Zafar, and his claim to fame was that he was one of the protagonists in the 1857 War of Independence. First rebellion, call it what you like, but the famous insurrection of 1857. Unfortunately, he was captured at the tomb of Humayun, arrested, and then Major Hodgson stripped him and shot him and left his naked body for 3 days at Humayun's tomb to demonstrate that this is the finale of the Mughal dynasty. A younger son, Mirza Jawan Bakht, was too young to have been portrayed by Schoefft, but Schoefft nevertheless did this portrait much later when he went back to Europe on what he imagined the boy must have looked like. In this, Jawan Bakht is shown as a bright young man with a future ahead of him. Unfortunately, that future was behind him, because he had to accompany his father and mother to Rangoon when they were exiled, and he became a drug addict and finally died at the age of 78 in Rangoon. Schoefft continues his journey, and when he reaches the Punjab, he crosses the Satluj, leaves his wife behind, goes to the Punjab, and is then invited by Maharaja Sher Singh, who was the ruler at the time, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's second son, to come and paint. And he does this painting of the Harmandir Sahib, which is known as the Golden Mandir in Amritsar, with the sacred tank around it. The interesting thing about this picture is you see Maharaja Ranjit Singh. It's a posthumous portrait, and on the left in yellow, and on the right you see the Bahis who are reading from the Granth Sahib, and the Akalis on the left-hand side who threatened Schoefft when he was painting because he put his brushes in his mouth, and they thought that he was smoking, and so, because that was anathema to the Sikhs, they then attacked him. They chased him. One of them cut his trousers with his braces with the saber, his trousers fell off, and he was then rescued by a man called Dr. Honigberger, who was a German doctor living in Amritsar at the time. And we have an account from Honigberger's book of this particular incident. So they rescued both Schoefft and the painting. His host during this brief visit, and he was only here for about 8 months, a little more than 8 months, was Maharaja Sher Singh. Anglophile, deeply interested in everything that was British, and of course, vain to the extreme. So it looks as if the entire Tosha Khana has been emptied on him. And things which are of relevance here, and Sue will be talking about a few of them, are that he's seated in the golden throne of his father, Ranjit Singh, ultimate indication of power, affirmation of power. And you can see at the top, just below his neck, is the Temur ruby, which is now in the royal collection, and it was surrendered to Queen Victoria under the treaty in 1849. And on the 46, and on the right and left, you can see the emeralds for which Maharaja Darbar Shah Khan was famous. These emeralds were given to the East, as Nadhra has pointed out, given to the East India Company. East India Company then takes them across and shows them to Queen Victoria, who already with the Kohinoor, because that had been surrendered to her personally, looks at the emeralds and says, oh, wow, how beautiful, what lovely emeralds. And of course, there was no option, but the East India Company directors then handed them over to her. So they are now fitted into a belt, which is kept in Windsor Castle. When Sayyid Babar Ali visited Windsor Castle, he was with Prince Philip. Prince Philip, they showed them various objects and then stopped at this belt. And he said that was from the Lahore Darbar. So Uncle Babar asked him, did you acquire it? At which Prince Philip, to his credit, said, no, we stole it. So you'll see also on his right arm the Kohinoor, the famous Kohinoor, which was in those days worn as a bazuband, not as they suspect, they keep talking about it being as a sarpesh. It was worn as a bazuband, and there'll be pictures of it, which Sue will share with you after they had been received by Queen Victoria. The glory that Schoefft was able to recreate was the Lahore Darbar. And in this famous portrait, which was done by him around about 1847-48, because it was exhibited in London, we know that. It was then exhibited in Vienna in 1855, exhibited in all places, Birmingham, Brighton, all of these places, in the hope that somebody would buy these paintings. Now, the interesting thing about this painting is that while there is a collection, aggregate of various personalities, I was able to decipher and decode this painting, because in the center, you can see two people back to back. They are Ajit Singh Sindhawadi on the left, and Raja Dehan Singh, the Prime Minister, on the right. They're shown back to back because they're mortal enemies. One had assassinated the other. And Ajit Singh, the one in orange, is looking up at Maharaja Sher Singh, who we think was initially thought to be the star of the painting, but in fact, he is saluting, and as you can see on the right-hand side next to the horse, a man in orange. And that was Raja Hira Singh, after whom Hira Mandin was named. He was the son of Raja Dehan Singh, and Raja Dehan Singh is the gentleman that you see here on the right in beige, in sort of cream. The rest of the family is shown in different cartouches. So you have Maharaja Ranjit Singh and his family in the central panel, the various Ferengis, Allard, Ventura, etc. on the right-hand side, and in the foreground you have Fakir Aijazuddin, Raja Dinanath, and a number of the other Afghan rulers who were dispossessed rulers who were brought into the court. So this painting was, it's visible, it's on display in the Lahore Fort, and I do recommend that you go and see it, and you will find that the identification of each of the characters is given there, and if you want even more detail, buy my book. Okay? So with that, because I leave it, it's one of the glorious aggregations of the Sikh Empire. And, you know, when he died, Schoefft, by this time, had been traveling in the US, etc. He goes back to London and there tries to sell his paintings, which are then sold almost at a pittance compared to the amount of work that he put into it. He dies penniless and is buried in a pauper's grave in Kensal Green. So today, the only monument, and it's a fitting monument to his talent, are these paintings. So I hope you endorse that as well. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Ijasa. I wish we did not have to stop. You could go on. But it gives me great pleasure to now introduce to you our second panelist, Susan Stronge. She's a senior curator in the Asian department of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. She is a leading specialist in the arts of the Mughal court, particularly relating to the reigns of Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan. She has written, lectured, and broadcast on a wide range of subjects from jewelry and precious stones to the art of the book under imperial Mughal patronage. She has contributed to national UK and international exhibitions and was the curator of the award-winning V&A exhibitions, The Arts of the Sikh Kingdoms, for which Aijazuddin has brought the book as well, in 1999, and Bejeweled Treasures, the Athani collections in 2015. Her books include the volume accompanying the Bejeweled Treasures exhibition, Tipu's Tigers, made for Mughal emperors in subsequent years. Her acclaimed exhibition, The Great Mughals, Art, Architecture, and Opulence, opened at the V&A on November 9, 2024, and runs until 5th May this year, as Razi has already pointed out. Sue, most welcome, and thank you very much for being with us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Nadhra. Can you hear me? That's the first thing. Good. Firstly, I'd like to thank Razi and the LLF for inviting me here. It's a great honour, and it's an enormous pleasure to be in Lahore again and to share the stage with my illustrious co-panellist and interlocutor. You see on the screen Maharaja Ranjit Singh, the first Sikh Maharaja of the Punjab, who was proclaimed Maharaja in Lahore in 1801. And I think it's worth pointing out that art history has been very unkind to this ruler, because it's been variously said that he had no interest in portraiture, he was a destroyer of buildings rather than a creator, and so on and so on. And I think that it's largely determined by the very vivid, very lively English accounts of foreigners who came to Lahore and were all enormously impressed by the dynamic personality of this small but very unprepossessing looking man, who of course was deformed by smallpox that he had in his childhood, was blind in one eye, and had an admirable disdain for fine dressing, personally. I mean, he was often seen in quite scruffy clothing and didn't wear many jewels, and it was often remarked on that this was the case. So the representation of him in this painting is actually quite unusual, because by his standards he's looking quite presentable, but he's being presented by his own wishes as a Maharaja. And I think it's this sense of performance which is very, very important to the Sikh Darbar during his reign. It's also very interesting that this combines local traditions. It's very much in the tradition of the paintings of the hill Rajas of the Punjab hills, combined with a very strongly Mughal iconography. So the umbrella over his head, the wrapped weapons held in red cloth, the colour of royalty, which are with his attendants, and so on. But this painting also was commissioned by Ranjit Singh himself, giving the lie to this lack of interest in portraiture, and was given to one of his European military commanders, on which the success of his army, which owed so much to the success of his army. Now, if we look at the map of the Sikh kingdom on the left, you can see that it occupies the provinces of the former Mughal Empire, Multan, Lahore and Kashmir. And so obviously the Mughal past is very much present, but there is a creative dynamism in what was being produced in the court of Ranjit Singh. And one of the most splendid survivors of the reign, of course, is the Golden Throne, which we'll see hopefully in a second. Yep. Which is now in the V&A, but it was taken at annexation in the way that Ijaz has described, but it was shipped first of all to the India Museum in London. And this was the Museum of the East India Company, which started off as a repository of things just randomly collected and the books of East India Company servants in India, and then rapidly took on all sorts of other items that had been looted in various wars, famously Tipu's tiger and then Ranjit Singh's throne. And these were always the highlights of the galleries of the India Museum in its various permutations. The collections were dispersed in 1879, and that's how the throne now is part of the collections of what became the Victoria and Albert Museum. But you can see the unique qualities and the extraordinary splendour of this, just a glimpse of what was lost. And Nadhra mentioned the auctions that took place in Lahore. We know what the contents were of these because Dalip Singh, the last Sikh ruler, who was only 5 when he was installed by the British in that way that they tended to have, in adulthood reconstituted and republished the auction catalogues. And so we have pages and pages of jewels, of jade and so on, precious fabrics, which show how tragic this dispersal of the Toshkhana was at the time. Because, of course, as soon as you separate a collection from its cultural background, and you lose that completely. So the the throne was being produced at the same time as Ranjit Singh was rebuilding the Golden Temple in Amritsar. And so again, this gives the lie to the tradition that he was a destroyer of monuments, because this itself was extremely splendid. And then the chronicles at the time, particularly the Persian language Umdatu Tavarik, is full of references to architectural refurbishments, to conservation, to gardens, to new buildings, and so on. Not least, this the Baradari in the Lahore fort. The upper story fell off was, I think, struck by lightning, wasn't it, in 1932? Sorry, 1932. And so what you see now is only the lower portion. But you see in the new research which has been done by Dr. Taranjit Singh Batalia that there is based on Persian sources, which is absolutely crucial, that there is a reinterpretation of the traditional history of this monument. But it's true that it is not made entirely of recycled materials which were looted from other monuments in and around Lahore, which a lot of British chronicles said at the time and later on, and so giving another layer of myth to the artistic patronage of Ranjit Singh. But what we had in Lahore at the time of Ranjit Singh was a whole array of artistic practices, many of which were dependent on, very long-established traditions, not least in metalwork. And you had the army of Ranjit Singh, of course, was the success of the empire rested on that. And when there's a quote I discovered the other day from Emily Eden, who was the sister of Lord Auckland, the Governor-General of India, the British Governor-General, who came to Lahore in 1838. And she wrote, "It is a horrid thing which we will none of us own publicly, but there is every reason to believe that his troops, Ranjit Singh's troops, are quite as well disciplined as ours." Well, amazing. But the success of the troops and the army was, of course, why the British held off for so long. And it was only after Ranjit Singh's death that the kingdom fell apart and the British seized the opportunity of annexing it. But the watered steel that was being produced in Lahore was of absolutely first-class quality, and the weapons that were being made were marvellous. So even a fairly modest dagger, which, like this, which is now in the V&A and had the same route, it came from the India Museum, has very fine watered steel, very fine chiselling, beautiful gold overlay, and I don't know if you'll be able to make out at the top of the this element here on the left, it says that it was actually made in Lahore, Sakhte Lahore in Persian. So we have a whole array of weapons that we know beyond doubt were made in Lahore and were made for Ranjit Singh's army. Now, he also had European generals who were disciplining his troops, which was part of the success of the army, and this was an order of merit that was designed specifically following European models to give to various levels of the hierarchy within the court. The drawing that you see on the left shows the sort of rich textiles that were being worn at the court. And this is a drawing that was acquired by your mentor and friend, W.G. Archer, in the 50s, who built up the museum's collection of Sikh paintings particularly, and he wrote the landmark book on the subject. But I think when you compare them with the real textiles that have survived and have been collected since the V&A's birth, you can see, you get a glimpse of the richness again of the court production and the way that Kashmir shawls, particularly, the industry was being stimulated by the demand at the court. And this is a detail of a very fine pashmina robe embroidered with gold embroidery of the kind that would have been worn. It has no direct link, no known link with Ranjit Singh's court, but it's very much of the period and of the time. And equally these pulkaris that would have been worn at the same time. But the catalogues that I mentioned that were republished by Dalip Singh are full of things like jewelled jade, and some of the things that came either directly or indirectly from the Indian Museum were collected by an English army officer in India in 1857, who acquired pieces like this. These are jewelled jade artifacts inlaid with rubies and emeralds and diamonds on the piece on the right. Some of which definitely came from the Sikh auctions. Unfortunately, the records at the time don't say which ones specifically, which is a source of great irritation. But the auction catalogues do list pieces like this, so it's very likely that this particular sword hilt did come from the Lahore Toshkhana. But then, of course, the famous jewels, which Ajaz has mentioned, were drawn by Emily Eden because Ranjit Singh brought them out whenever he had important visitors and showed them. And you will see at the centre, in the above the central emerald, you see the Kohinoor diamond, and on the right, the so-called Timur ruby. But this is a typical depiction of Ranjit Singh as he would have been seen by most visitors. Very simple in his manner, but with this compelling personality, which absolutely everybody commented on. And this is the original setting of the Kohinoor diamond with two other smaller but still very large diamonds that were worn in a bazuband by Ranjit Singh. This is Sher Singh before he was Schoefftised, and you can see that while before the death of Ranjit Singh, he was very imposing in his appearance, but very plainly adorned in jewels. And this is what he looked like, after he became Maharaja, apparently wearing the entire contents of the royal treasury. I won't repeat what Ajaz said about which jewels, but this is a close-up of the Timur ruby in the middle, which is neither connected with Timur, the great Central Asian conqueror, or a ruby. It's actually a spinel, which is gemologically similar to ruby, but absolutely distinct. And this was one of the greatly prized precious stones of the Mughal emperors, and many Sikhs, the Sikh treasuries had stones like this in them, which were historic stones. The history of this particular stone is the same as the Kohinoor diamond. It was taken from the Mughal treasury by Nadir Shah of Iran in 1739, removed to Iran, came into Afghan hands, Ahmad Shah Durrani, and then eventually was acquired by Ranjit Singh in exchange for giving support to the deposed Afghan ruler. And we know this in this particular case because its entire history is inscribed on it, but because of a misinterpretation of the Persian inscription, it was mistakenly thought to be directly linked with Timur. It's not. It was taken, it says absolutely plainly, it was taken by Nadir Shah to Iran. And this is exactly the same history as the Kohinoor diamond, so it's a circular route coming back. and then, of course, was taken. The Kohinoor diamond was one of the articles of the Treaty of Lahore by which the annexation the annexation of the Punjab took place by the British in 1849. And this is a replica of the Kohinoor diamond as it was displayed at the Great Exhibition in 1851. It was displayed hoping to impress everyone as this great trophy. Actually, it disappointed enormously because under the cool northern light, it didn't sparkle particularly. It was in a rather dark case. But also, the cut was completely contrary to the aesthetics of diamond cutting in the West. And this is the tragedy of the history of diamond cutting from the subcontinent. So the great, probably Deccan Golconda cuts and certainly the Mughal diamond cuts have almost entirely disappeared because when stones like this came to the West, including the Kohinoor diamond, they were recut because the original cuts were very asymmetrical and the Western aesthetic was for symmetry. And so when this was recut, it reduced in size from 180 carats to 105.6. So that's a huge diminution of size. Yeah. And just to give you a sense of the size, because carats, I mean, to me, don't mean a vast amount. Obviously, that's a big stone. But it was 4.1 centimetres wide. And when you see the replica, it really is a staggering stone. So this is one of the great tragedies of the history of diamond cutting in the Indian subcontinent, that so little has survived. So I leave you on that rather bleak note.
Can I, Sue, with your permission, can I just add, there's a book by William Dalrymple on the Kohinoor.
And Anita Anand.
And Anita Anand. And they launched it here in one of the previous LLFs. Sorry.
And
I had to introduce them. And when the figures were given that you just mentioned of 108 down to, 70, what is it now? 108. From 187 to 108.
Yeah. That's metric. Yeah.
Metric. And I asked William, where did the pieces go? We know where the remnant went. It's in the Tower of London. But what about the other 78 carats? Where are they? Because they're equally as historic as the original stone was. And he said, I'm not sure, I never bothered to ask. So somebody is hanging on to 78 carats of the original Kohinoor.
Except that it was reduced so much because the original diamond was flawed.
Flawed, of course.
And it wouldn't have been a crystalline, it wouldn't have been a limpidly clear.
It wouldn't have been necessarily in the same,
but that's a lot of diamond, that's a lot of carats, yeah.
When the Cullinan was broken up...
Granny's chips.
Granny's chips. The Cullinan diamond, which was the largest at the time, was broken, and they made into 5 pieces, prime pieces. One is in the royal scepter. One is in the imperial state crown in London. 2 were worn by Queen Mary and later Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and they were called Granny's chips, because the Queen referred to them as being her grandmother's little diamond ornaments. And the 5th is one of the emerald necklace that the Queen wears, and it's the 5th piece that dangles from it. The rest of them were scattered. But the point I'm trying to make is that they were equally of historical significance, okay, as were the remnants of the Kohinoor. But please, thank you so much indeed. I'm sorry I didn't mean to explain this.
Thank you very much for another round of introductions to the Lahore Darbar's lost Toshakhana artifacts, the grand objects that were once a part of our city's grandeur. May I ask you to turn off the mics because it's going to start echoing soon. And Kamran Lashari Saab has joined us, so we can actually offer a warm welcome to him. And if I may turn to you, Lashari Saab, now that the fort is in your hands and the artifacts that Ijaz Saab talked about are very much a part of the Sikh gallery, could you tell us a little bit about the future of this collection, how it's being safeguarded, how you're promoting it, and what should we expect?
Let me share a couple of incidents related to this. First is that there's a gentleman, Bobby Singh, based in UK, who came down to Lahore and met me, and he said, this was about a couple of years ago, that he and the Sikh community wishes to sponsor a statue to be stationed of Maharaja Ranjit Singh riding the horse, the sword. And I rolled it in my mind whether I should ask the government, but then I said the file will keep rolling. So anyways, I agreed and I said, okay. So the space was provided. And after some months, the vandalism took place. Some jihadi came over there and he slashed the arm. And, but the most important and interesting was on the Facebook, somebody writing, what has Maharaja Ranjit Singh to do with the Lahore fort? So that goes for the general understanding of some people about the Sikhs' footprint or in Lahore fort. And the other day, Dr. Turanjit Singh, who hails from USA and has a very good hold on this knowledge that we're talking about, he took us around. I went with him, and we walked through the whole fort. There were, to my own surprise also, almost 24 different points where the Sikhs have intervened in Lahore fort in small or in more, let's say, strong manner. So one is Aijazuddin's Haveli, where we see this, these grand portraits. The other is the Khadak Singh Haveli, which hasn't been exposed to people. Good news for everybody that we are now restoring, we're at advanced stage of that Haveli, and we'll call it, we were turning it into a heritage hotel, and $500 per night. That is the 7 rooms there, plus some more down below, but that's the vision to recreate. That was the first murder that took place after Ranjit Singh, the famous, which led to the family disputes of Chet Singh, was in that particular Haveli. Now coming to the other incident, one of my colleagues said the ambassador of Hungary wishes to meet you. This is again 2-3 years ago. I said, okay, welcome. And so here comes the ambassador, and he says, do you know why I wanted to meet you? I said, no idea. So he said, you know, you're sitting upon my paintings. To be honest, till then I knew about the Princess Bhamba's collections, and then the archaeology was actually looking up. But I didn't realize what has it got to do with Hungary. So he said, you know, those are done by a Hungarian painter, and they are not in too good a condition. So I've come to meet you, and we need to do something about it. So I said, okay. And then that's where we sat with each other. And he said, I'll bring the expertise from Hungary, but my embassy doesn't have that kind of funds. We'll have to generate those funds. But I admired how their ambassadors pursue their, culture. I wonder if it happens with the Pakistani ambassadors posted abroad or anywhere. Would they do something like this? So ultimately, Bank of Punjab must give them the credit, came in, and so for 4 or 5 months, the restoration process took place, and day in and out, those professionals worked there, and now they're there. But we still realize that it's not marketed too much, not too many people visit, and we are working now on with the Khan Trust for Culture to conserve that building that is called the Aijazuddin's Haveli, and also the other portion that I'm saying, Khadak Singh Haveli. Then ultimately we might transfer these to this or to the. We are also working on the Summer Palace, which is the basements of the Lahore fort, which have not been exposed to the people for the last century or so. So that's a very extensive project, and a lot of work is going on there, and within 2 years we should be able to do that. That will be turned into an interpretation center, and So ultimately, we think that these kind of paintings, which can match any European standard or any world standard, in fact, they're amazing, need to be displayed at a more imposing place and a more conducive atmosphere. So that's what we are very mindful and working with the Arkham Trust. But another couple of good news is that on the Sikh heritage, I think there's a renewed interest and vigor in the government, I find, and lots of projects are coming up, not only within the Lahore Fort, but outside also, like Ranjit Singh's Haveli itself. These days, my department, Wall City, is working today. Somebody sent me, Times of India has covered that this Haveli is now nearing completion in Gujranwala. So there's quite a buzz in India that so much of Sikh heritage. Gurdwara in Bhai Karam Singh in Jhelum, we are working on that also. That's also at an advanced stage. And this next budget, there are at least 30 heritage sites of the Sikhs, which all will be conserved and restored. So that's a good thing.
Thank you very much. This all sounds promising. Good luck to you and more power to you. We can open the floor for some questions for the panelists. We have, I think 7 minutes. So maybe 3 questions. Gigi, of course.
Thank you. Thank you all for this gracious presentation. I just want to make 4 quick points that I think there also are objects of interest here in Lahore. In addition to what we've heard, at the Lahore Museum, the Fakir family gave a very large collection of objects and paintings that have not been studied. And so that's the Lahore Museum. Susan, you shared one of that ivory knife, which had the gold working on it. I have seen a very similar one. I have studied all the Sikh era objects at the Lahore Museum. I think a similar one exists in Lahore. The second is below, on the ground floor of the Mahijinda Haveli, is a Sikh armory, which was the armory that the British had captured in 1849. It was opposite Sheesh Mahal, went in storage is there. So working with the arms people, the British Museum, we identify many of the objects. The third thing I would like to say is that we Sikhs don't call ourselves Sikhs. We say Sikh. And Lashari Virji said it just right. So I just want to point that out. That, if I come here and say Muslim, we say Muslim. Thank you. And the last one I want to say is that, as I said, I've worked here for more than 5 years. I have been able to work with nearly every place in the world, except one institution that is in Lahore. I don't need to name it. They sit like a serpent on their collection. They will not allow anyone to touch it. Whether it be somebody's eldest Vakir Saab, an influencer Lashari, anybody like me. What do we do about it? They have a wealth there. How do we put our hands on as researchers? Thank you.
Dr. Saab is referring to the Punjab archives. He's too, I know, he's too embarrassed to say it. Punjab archives. If you'd really want to shorten your life by 15 years, try and do research.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for this wonderful session. And Lashari Saab, thank you for doing all the work for Lahore that you've done. You're a mini Sir Gangaram for us. So thank you for all the restoration, for doing this. I know I've said this before to you personally, but one little thing, within the Huzuri Bagh, which I visit very regularly, when can we remove walls, freezers, and Lay's chips packets, and all the stalls? When can we do that?
Pointing this out, and it's bane of life. I also, that's iron on in my side. You see this complex, like Badshahi Masjid and Gurdwara and Huzuri Bagh, all, this is divided in at least 3 departments. PHA has hold on the bigger park. Wall City is looking after the fort. And the Huzuri Bagh is a mixture of Okaf, who holds the control of the big mosque. These guys are there, let's say, lessees or on rentals sitting there. But fortunately, there is a project now, which we have partnered with the Awqaf. We are working on the Badshahi Masjid very extensively, the conservation of the entire, including the Hazuri Bagh. Now, Hazuri Bagh, this side, if you see, that is with the fort, वो ज़रा आपको अच्छा नज़र आएगा, वो साइड देखेंगे तो आपको सफाई और मसाइल. But they have agreed to work with us, and we are taking them all out of this visual pollution and giving them one particular designed area where they will be stationed. So,
may I?
Thank you. Thank you.
This will be the last question.
Thank you very much for this great presentation. I've been lucky enough to visit the Lahore Museum and the Bhamba collection. I wanted to understand how much, as we have a respected Susan Stronge here, who's curated such amazing exhibitions, and after seeing the great Mughal and the great display at V&A, I want to understand what are the points that you're taking in note for display of the paintings at the Bhamba collection. They are such important works, but the lights and the labels and all of those, which is, I mean, of course, we are taking a lot from museums from the West, but are we really looking at the install and display in the same way?
When those experts, the professionals came down from Hungary, so these things were modified or got into position with their advice. And as I mentioned, I don't say my department is really has that capability, but it's the Khan Trust. We depend upon them. They have done the internationally many, like Museum of Humayun in India, and in Canada, a full-fledged museum they have done. So they are partners with me, and they initially joined my department saying, "Acha, hum tumhare sath, we'll do a MOU of 6 months because we haven't had good experience before." They had packed up and gone. Today it is more than 12 years, and we are working very closely. And they say this is our best partnership. We are working in 13 countries. So I'm very proud of this partnership. And the picture wall that you see, that also has come out because of their part. And I assure you, the proper standards, international standards, will be observed wherever we locate them. At the moment, it's at the Maijanda's Haveli.
Thank you very much. One last question.
Yeah. I'm Gurmeet Rai. I'm a conservation architect visiting from India. I've been working a lot on the Sikh heritage as well as a non-Sikh heritage across the border. My question here is that with all the support and attention that Pakistan government would be giving to the Sikh heritage, I did have the opportunity to visit Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Samadhi yesterday. What I would like to kind of recommend as a Sikh and also as a citizen of the two Punjab or the larger subcontinent here, would be that when we are developing a conservation strategy for the buildings built by a Sikh patron or Sikh heritage, it's very important to recognize the earlier layers of history as well. For instance, yesterday when I saw the Samadhi, I was a little quite disappointed that, you know, the large chunks of earth has been excavated between the gate of the Samadhi and the Samadhi itself to build a concrete underfloor. And when you go into the underfloor, first of all, you've compromised the integrity of the monument. When you go below into that particular level, you get to see the bastion of the Lahore, of the Hazuri Bagh. Now you've got a Mughal layer to protect, you've got a Sikh layer to protect, and we have this whole intention of conservation, but the integrity and the authenticity of the monument is being compromised. So if we are touching these monuments, then I think we need to follow very good standards of coexistence of historical layers and not define. Even the international standards have to be understood in the way we need to understand our heritage and not just, you know.
Yeah, your point is well taken. And it is largely how you have described. Again, it's easy for me to shift like a good bureaucrat. It's with the Vacuum Trust Board. We just spoke about another department called Archives, but let me name another one, and that is, oh God, the best heritage assets of Pakistan, I have now learned, are with the Evacu Trust, particularly the Sikh heritage and the churches and other minorities, Jains, etc. So, and they are most oblivious to what it, they have no sense, archaeology, archives ko phir thoda sa hoga, inko to hai nahi, and they're into some other businesses, but they are for the moment they are the custodians. Now our provincial minister, Arora Singh, has been to some extent able to get some of these controls provincialized. And he himself was pointing out virtually the same thing which you are saying, that देखे उन्होंने उधर कितने चीजें build up कर दी हैं, एक गुरुद्वारा का अपना साख होती है. So too many structures and coming too close. Even on Kartarpur, some people have observation that despite 17 billion rupees were spent on that, but what I've learned, apart from the the fabric, there's a look and feel of a certain monument or a shrine or a place, particularly of a spiritual place. So if that is lost, sometimes we kill with our love, and that generally happens with heritage sites and natural sites. One has to be very sensitive, very careful. So we are learning lessons, but I assure you that these next 30 buildings will not have this kind of problem.
And with that, we one last round of applause for our panelists. Thank you very much again, and thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed the session and are walking away with a love for these objects. Go and look at them, learn from them. They have tons of stories to offer to you. Thank you very much.